I told the credit union I never authorized anything, I said, my voice shaking as I stared at the pile of documents on the banker's desk. My stepfather Greg grabbed my wrist and pressed it hard against the armrest of my chair. His fingers dug into my skin, and I could feel my pulse throbbing under his grip. "Don't make this a scene, Ashley," he hissed through clenched teeth. My mom sat beside him, her arms crossed, her face tight with frustration. "Stop being so dramatic. We're just trying to help you understand your responsibilities." I pulled my hand away and rubbed the red marks he'd left. My heart was pounding. The banker, a middle-aged woman named Janet, flipped through the folder in front of her with a frown deepening on her face. She kept pausing, reading something, then looking up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Ma'am," Janet said slowly, her voice suddenly very serious. "You don't need a lawyer." She paused, and the silence felt suffocating. "You need the police. My name is Ashley, and I'm 29 years old. I work as a dental hygienist in Portland, Oregon, and up until 3 weeks ago, I thought my biggest problem was figuring out how to save enough money for a down payment on a condo. I'd been living in a small apartment near the clinic where I worked, keeping my head down, paying my bills on time, and trying to build a life for myself. I thought I was doing everything right, but then I got a call from the credit union. They said I'd missed 2 payments on a loan I didn't even know I had. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe identity theft or a computer error. I told them I'd never taken out a loan with them, never signed anything. The woman on the phone sounded skeptical, like she'd heard that excuse 1,000 times before. "We have your signature on file," she said, "and your social security number. You co-signed for a $25,000 personal loan." I felt the floor drop out from under me. $25,000. I didn't have that kind of money. I didn't even have that kind of credit limit. I told her there must be some mistake, that I needed to see the documents. She scheduled an appointment for me to come in, and I spent the next 2 days sick to my stomach, barely able to eat or sleep. When I told my mom about it, she got quiet. Then she said, "Maybe you should talk to Greg." Greg had been in my life since I was 16. My dad died when I was 14, and my mom met Greg 2 years later at a community event. He seemed nice enough at first, always bringing flowers, taking us out to dinner, acting like he wanted to be part of our family. My mom was lonely, and I think she wanted to believe he was the answer to all her problems. They got married when I was 18, right before I left for community college. I didn't live with them much after that. I got my own place, worked full-time while going to school, and built my life separately. I saw them on holidays, called my mom every week, but I kept my distance from Greg. Something about him always felt off, like he was performing kindness rather than actually being kind. When I confronted my mom about the loan, she got defensive. "Greg needed help," she said. "He was going through a rough patch with his business, and he needed someone to co-sign. He said he'd handle all the payments. You didn't have to do anything." "But I didn't agree to do it," I said. "I didn't sign anything." She waved her hand like I was being ridiculous. "You must have forgotten. You were probably distracted. You know how you get when you're stressed." I didn't forget. I would never forget signing something like that. But my mom didn't want to hear it, and Greg just smiled and said I was overreacting, that everything would be fine, that he'd take care of it. Now, sitting in the credit union with Janet staring at me like I was a crime victim, I realized my mom and Greg had been lying to me. The documents were spread out in front of us, pages and pages of financial records, and Janet's face had gone from professional to deeply concerned. "This is fraud," Janet said, her finger tapping on one of the papers. "The signature on this application doesn't match the signature on your account records. Not even close." I felt cold all over. Greg shifted in his seat, his jaw tight. My mom looked between Janet and me, her expression flickering between confusion and anger. Are you saying someone forged my daughter's signature? My mom asked, her voice rising. Janet nodded slowly. Yes. And based on what I'm seeing here, this isn't the only document that's been tampered with. There are multiple loans, all taken out within the past year, all with forged signatures. I couldn't breathe. Multiple loans. How much money were we talking about? How deep did this go? Greg stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're accusing me of something I didn't do. Janet didn't flinch. She picked up her phone. I'm calling the police. You need to stay here. The room felt like it was shrinking. Greg stood frozen for a moment, his face red, his hands clenched into fists. My mom grabbed his arm, her voice shrill. Greg, what is she talking about? What did you do? He jerked his arm away from her. I didn't do anything. This is a misunderstanding. Janet was already on the phone, speaking in a low, calm voice to whoever was on the other end. I sat there, numb, trying to process what was happening. Forged signatures. Multiple loans. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. I thought back to the past year, trying to remember if there were any signs I'd missed. Greg had always been secretive about his finances. He ran some kind of consulting business, but he never talked about what he actually did. My mom said he was private, that he didn't like to mix work and home life. I'd accepted that explanation because I didn't care enough to dig deeper. But now I was wondering what else I'd missed. Had he done this to anyone else? Had he stolen from my mom too? Janet hung up the phone and looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and determination. The police are on their way. I need you to stay calm and answer their questions as honestly as you can. Greg moved toward the door, but Janet stepped in front of him. Sir, I need you to sit down. If you leave, this will only get worse for you. He glared at her, but he sat down. My mom was crying now, her hands covering her face. I wanted to feel sorry for her, but all I felt was anger. She'd defended him. She'd told me I was overreacting, that I must have forgotten, that I was being dramatic. She'd chosen him over me. The police arrived 20 minutes later. 2 officers, one older with graying hair, the other younger, and built like he spent all his free time at the gym. They took statements from all of us, and Janet handed over the documents. The older officer, whose name was Officer Bennett, looked through everything carefully, his expression grim. This is identity theft and fraud, he said, looking at Greg. You're going to need to come down to the station with us. Greg's face went pale. I want a lawyer. That's your right, Officer Bennett said, but you're still coming with us. They led him out in handcuffs. My mom tried to follow, but the younger officer stopped her. Ma'am, you need to stay here. We'll contact you once we've processed him. She turned to me, her eyes red and swollen. Ashley, you have to tell them this is a mistake. Greg wouldn't do this. He loves us. I stared at her, my chest tight with rage. He forged my signature, Mom. He stole my identity. He took out loans in my name, and now I'm responsible for them unless I can prove he did it. How is that love? She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand. He was desperate. His business was failing and he needed help. He was going to pay it all back. That's not how this works, I said, my voice breaking. He didn't ask me. He didn't give me a choice. He stole from me. Janet cleared her throat. Ashley, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to start the process of disputing these loans. You'll need to file a police report, which you've already done, and then we'll work on getting your name cleared. It's going to take time, but we'll do everything we can to help you. I nodded, unable to speak. My whole life felt like it was falling apart. My credit was ruined. My relationship with my mom was shattered, and Greg, the man who'd been part of my family for over a decade, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. The next few days were a blur, I filed more reports, met with a lawyer who specialized in identity theft cases, and started the long process of trying to undo the damage Greg had caused. The lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s named Diane, told me it could take months, maybe even years, to fully resolve everything. But the good news is, the evidence is clear, she said. The forgeries are obvious, and the credit union has already confirmed that the signatures don't match. You have a strong case. I asked her how much money Greg had stolen. She pulled out a file and went through the numbers. From what we've found so far, it's close to $60,000 across 3 different loans. $60,000. I felt sick. How had I not noticed? How had my mom not noticed? Diane leaned forward, her expression serious. Ashley, I need to ask you something. Did your mother know about any of this? I hesitated. My mom had seemed genuinely shocked when Janet told us about the fraud, but she'd also defended Greg so quickly, so fiercely. Had she known? Had she helped him? I don't know, I said quietly, but I'm going to find out. That night, I called my mom. She answered on the first ring, her voice hoarse. Ashley, please. You have to help Greg. He made a mistake, but he didn't mean to hurt you. A mistake, I said, my voice cold. He forged my signature. He stole my identity. That's not a mistake, Mom. That's a crime. She started crying again. He was trying to save his business. He was trying to take care of us. By destroying my credit and putting me in debt? How is that taking care of me? She didn't answer. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Greg had been in my life for 13 years. 13 years of family dinners, holidays, birthdays, and the whole time he'd been planning this? Or had it been a spur-of-the-moment decision, something he'd done out of desperation? Either way, it didn't matter. He'd stolen from me, and my mom had defended him. The next morning, I got a call from Officer Bennett. We've arrested Greg and charged him with identity theft and fraud. He's being held on bail, but I wanted to let you know that we found more evidence during our investigation. What kind of evidence? I asked. He had files on his computer, documents showing that he'd been planning this for at least 6 months. He researched how to forge signatures, how to bypass identity verification systems. This wasn't a desperate mistake. This was premeditated. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. 6 months. He'd spent half a year planning to steal from me. There's something else, Officer Bennett continued. We found evidence that he might have done this to other people too. We're looking into it, but it's possible you're not his only victim. I hung up and sat on my couch, staring at the wall. Other victims. How many people had he hurt? How many lives had he ruined? My phone rang again. This time it was my mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ashley, I need to talk to you, she said, her voice trembling. Can I come over? I didn't want to see her, but I agreed. She arrived an hour later, looking like she hadn't slept either. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hair unbrushed. She sat down on the edge of my couch, wringing her hands. I didn't know, she said. I swear to you, I didn't know he was doing this. But you defended him, I said, even after you found out. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know. I was scared. I didn't want to believe it. I thought if I could convince you it was a mistake, then maybe it would all go away. It's not going away, Mom. He destroyed my credit. I'm in debt because of him. And now I have to spend months, maybe years, fixing this. She covered her face with her hands. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have stood up for you. Why didn't you? I asked, my voice breaking. Why did you choose him over me? She looked up at me, her face crumpling. Because I was afraid of being alone again. After your dad died, I felt so empty, so lost. Greg made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't just some widow nobody cared about. I knew he wasn't perfect, but I thought he loved me. I thought he loved us. I wanted to feel sorry for her, but I couldn't. Not yet. She'd chosen her fear over my well-being, and that wasn't something I could forgive easily. I need space, I said. I can't deal with you right now. She nodded, wiping her eyes. I understand. Just, please don't shut me out forever. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you to give me a chance to make this right. I didn't say anything. She stood up and left, and I sat there in the silence, trying to figure out what to do next. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into the process of clearing my name. Diane was relentless, filing motions, gathering evidence, and building a case against Greg. The credit union started the dispute process, and Janet kept me updated on every step. It was exhausting, but it gave me something to focus on, something to fight for. Greg was arraigned and pleaded not guilty. His lawyer tried to argue that it was all a misunderstanding, that he'd had permission to use my information. But the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signatures, the premeditated planning, the other victims who'd started coming forward. He didn't have a leg to stand on. My mom called me a few times, but I didn't answer. I wasn't ready to talk to her. I needed to focus on myself, on rebuilding the life Greg had tried to destroy. One afternoon, Diane called me with news. The prosecutor is offering Greg a plea deal. If he pleads guilty, he'll get 5 years in prison and be required to pay restitution to all his victims. 5 years? I said. That's it? It's actually a decent deal for a case like this, Diane said, and the restitution means you'll get some of your money back, though it might take time. I didn't know what to say. 5 years felt like nothing compared to the damage he'd caused, but at least it was something. At least he'd face consequences. What about my mom? I asked. Did she know? Diane paused. We investigated her thoroughly, and there's no evidence that she was involved. She didn't sign anything, didn't help him forge your signature. She was just willfully ignorant. Willfully ignorant? That sounded about right. A few days later, Greg accepted the plea deal. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, and the judge ordered him to pay back every penny he'd stolen. It would take years for me to see any of that money, but at least it was a start. I stood outside the courthouse, watching as they led him away in handcuffs. He looked smaller somehow, defeated. My mom was there too, standing off to the side, crying. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, but I turned away. I didn't know if I'd ever forgive her, but for now, I needed to focus on myself. I needed to rebuild my credit, my life, my sense of security. And I needed to figure out who I was without the weight of Greg's betrayal dragging me down. As I walked to my car, I felt a strange sense of relief. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But it was a beginning. 3 months after Greg's sentencing, I was still trying to piece my life back together. The credit union had started the dispute process, but it moved at a glacial pace. Every time I thought I was making progress, another document surfaced. Another debt appeared on my credit report. Diane assured me it was normal, that these things took time, but the waiting was killing me. I'd thrown myself into work, picking up extra shifts at the clinic, staying late to clean equipment and organize files, anything to keep my mind occupied. My co-workers noticed the change in me. Before all this, I'd been the one cracking jokes during lunch breaks, organizing happy hours after work. Now I barely spoke unless someone asked me a direct question. One evening, as I was closing up the clinic, my phone rang. It was Diane. "Ashley, we need to talk," she said, her voice tight. "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" My stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" I'd rather discuss it in person. Can you be here at 9? I agreed, even though I had to rearrange my entire schedule. I spent the night tossing and turning, imagining worst-case scenarios. Had Greg found some way to make things worse? Had more debts surfaced? The next morning, I sat in Diane's office, my hands gripping the armrests of my chair. She had a stack of files on her desk, and her expression was grim. I received some information from the prosecutor's office yesterday, she began. During their investigation into Greg's activities, they found something that complicates your case. What do you mean? She pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. This is a bank statement from an account in your name. It was opened 2 years ago, and it shows regular deposits totaling over $15,000. I stared at the paper, my heart racing. I don't have an account like this. I've never seen this before. I know, Diane said. But the problem is, the deposits were made using your information, and some of them were cashed checks that appear to have your signature. Forged signatures, I said, my voice rising. Just like the loans. Yes, but here's where it gets tricky. Some of these deposits came from your mother. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. What? Diane pulled out another document, a series of check copies. Your mother wrote checks to this account. Small amounts at first, a few $100s here and there. But over time, the amounts increased. The last deposit was for $3,000, made just 2 weeks before the credit union contacted you about the first loan. I couldn't breathe. My mom had been giving Greg money that went into a fake account in my name. Why would she do that? I don't know, Diane said. But we need to find out. This changes things, Ashley. If your mother was knowingly participating in this scheme, she could be charged as an accomplice. She said she didn't know, I said weakly. She said she had no idea what Greg was doing. Maybe she didn't know about the forged signatures or the fraudulent loans, Diane said. But she clearly knew about this account. And if she was writing checks to it, she must have known something wasn't right. I felt sick. My mom had lied to me. She'd looked me in the eye, cried, begged for my forgiveness, and the whole time she'd been hiding this. What do I do? I asked. You need to confront her, Diane said, and depending on what she says, we might need to involve the police again. I left Diane's office in a daze. I drove straight to my mom's house, not bothering to call ahead. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw her car was there. I sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to calm my racing heart, trying to figure out what I was going to say. Finally, I got out and knocked on the door. She answered almost immediately, her face lighting up when she saw me. Ashley, I'm so glad you're here. I've been wanting to talk to you. I pushed past her into the house. We need to talk. Now. Her smile faded. What's wrong? I pulled out the bank statements Diane had given me and threw them on the kitchen table. What's this? She looked at the papers, her face going pale. Where did you get these? From my lawyer. You've been writing checks to an account in my name. An account I never opened. An account Greg set up using my information. She sank into a chair, her hands shaking. I didn't know it was in your name. Greg told me it was his business account, that he needed help covering expenses. And you believed him? I trusted him, she said, her voice breaking. He said his business was going through a rough patch, that he just needed a little help to get back on his feet. I thought I was helping him. For 2 years? I said, my voice rising. You gave him $15,000 over 2 years, and you never once questioned where the money was going? She started crying. I know it sounds stupid now, but I believed him. He was so convincing. He showed me invoices, receipts, all these documents that made it look like he was running a legitimate business. Those were fake, I said. Everything he showed you was fake. And now I'm on the hook for it, because that account is in my name. I'm so sorry, she sobbed. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. Not anymore. Did you know he was forging my signature? She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. No, I didn't know about that. I only found out when the police arrested him. But you knew something was wrong, I pressed. You knew he was lying to you, taking money from you, and you didn't say anything. You didn't warn me. She buried her face in her hands. I was scared. I didn't want to admit that I'd been fooled. I didn't want to lose him. So you let him destroy my life instead, I said quietly. She reached for me, but I stepped back. Ashley, please. I made a mistake. I know I did. But I'm your mother. I love you. I would never intentionally hurt you. But you did hurt me, I said, and I don't know if I can forgive you for that. I turned and walked out, leaving her crying at the kitchen table. As I drove away, I felt a strange numbness settle over me. My mom had betrayed me just as much as Greg had. Maybe not in the same way, but the result was the same. My life was in ruins, and she'd helped make it happen. I went back to Diane's office the next day and told her everything my mom had said. Diane listened carefully, taking notes, her expression neutral. So she claims she didn't know the account was in your name, Diane said when I finished. And she says she believed Greg's story about needing business expenses covered. That's what she said. Do you believe her? I thought about it. My mom had always been naive when it came to money. She'd let my dad handle all the finances when he was alive, and after he died, she'd struggled to manage on her own. Greg had swooped in and taken over, and she'd been grateful for it. Maybe she really had been that blind. I don't know, I said finally. Part of me wants to believe her, but another part of me thinks she had to have known something was wrong. Diane tapped her pen against her notepad. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to request access to all of your mother's financial records for the past 3 years. If she was truly unaware of what Greg was doing, her finances will show it. But if she was knowingly involved, there will be evidence. And if you find evidence, then we'll have to report it to the prosecutor. She could face charges. I felt a lump in my throat. The thought of my mom going to prison made me feel sick. But I also couldn't let her get away with this. Not if she'd knowingly helped Greg. Do it, I said. Over the next few weeks, Diane worked on obtaining my mom's financial records. In the meantime, I focused on trying to rebuild my credit. I opened a secured credit card, set up automatic payments, and monitored my credit report obsessively. Every time I saw Greg's fraudulent accounts on there, I felt a surge of anger. I also started seeing a therapist. I'd been resistant to the idea at first, thinking I could handle everything on my own, but my boss at the clinic noticed I was struggling and recommended someone. The therapist, a kind woman in her 40s named Patricia, helped me work through the betrayal and the anger I was feeling. It's normal to feel confused about your mother, Patricia said during one of our sessions. She's your parent, and you want to believe she had your best interests at heart. But the reality is, she failed you, and it's okay to be angry about that. I don't want to be angry, I said. I just want to move on. You will, she said. But first, you have to let yourself feel what you're feeling. You can't just push it down and pretend everything's fine. She was right. I'd been trying so hard to stay strong, to keep moving forward, that I hadn't allowed myself to really process what had happened. And now, with the possibility that my mom might be charged as an accomplice, everything was coming to a head. One afternoon, I got a call from Diane. I have the financial records, she said. Can you come in? I drove to her office, my hands shaking the entire way. When I arrived, Diane had the records spread out on her desk, pages and pages of bank statements, check copies, and receipts. Your mother's finances tell an interesting story, Diane said. She was making regular deposits into that account, as we already knew. But what's more interesting is what happened to her own accounts during that time. She pointed to a series of transactions. Starting about 6 months before the first loan was taken out in your name, your mother began withdrawing large sums of cash from her own accounts. 500 here, 1,000 there. Over the course of a year, she withdrew nearly $20,000 in cash. Where did it go? I asked. We don't know for sure, but my guess is she was giving it to Greg. And here's the thing that really concerns me. She pulled out another document. 3 months before the first fraudulent loan, your mother took out a home equity line of credit on her house. She borrowed $30,000 against her home. I stared at the paper, my mind racing. Why would she do that? I think Greg convinced her to, Diane said. And I think she used that money to cover his debts, thinking she was helping him save his business. But she told me she didn't know he was in financial trouble. She lied, Diane said simply. Or at the very least, she was lying to herself. The evidence shows she knew exactly what was happening. She knew Greg was drowning in debt, and she was trying to bail him out. And when her money ran out, he turned to you. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My mom had known. She'd known Greg was in trouble, and she'd thrown her own money at the problem, hoping it would go away. And when it didn't, she'd let him use me as the next source of funds. What does this mean? I asked. It means we have to report this to the prosecutor, Diane said. Your mother was complicit. She might not have forged your signature herself, but she enabled Greg to do it. She knew he was desperate, and she didn't stop him. Will she be charged? Possibly. It depends on what the prosecutor decides, but at the very least she'll be questioned as part of the investigation. I left Diane's office feeling like my entire world had collapsed. My mom hadn't just made a mistake. She'd actively participated in Greg's scheme, even if she hadn't realized the full extent of what he was doing. She'd sacrificed her own financial security to help him, and when that wasn't enough, she'd let him destroy mine. That night, I got a call from my mom. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ashley, the police called me, she said, her voice panicked. They want me to come in for questioning. What's happening? You lied to me, I said, my voice cold. You told me you didn't know Greg was in trouble, but you did. You gave him money. You took out a loan against your house, and you let him use me to cover his debts. I was trying to help him, she said, sobbing. I thought if I could just give him enough time, he'd turn things around. And when he couldn't, you let him ruin my life, I said. You chose him over me, again. I'm sorry, she cried. I'm so sorry. Please, Ashley, you have to help me. Tell them I didn't know what he was doing. But you did know, I said. And I'm not going to lie for you. I hung up and turned off my phone. I couldn't deal with her right now. I couldn't deal with any of this. The next few weeks were a nightmare. My mom was called in for questioning, and the prosecutor decided to charge her with being an accessory to fraud. It wasn't as serious as the charges Greg faced, but it was enough to potentially send her to prison for a year or more if she was convicted. I tried not to think about it. I tried to focus on my own case, on clearing my name and rebuilding my credit. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mom's face, heard her voice begging me to help her. Patricia, my therapist, reminded me that I wasn't responsible for my mom's choices. She made her own decisions, Patricia said, and now she has to face the consequences. But it didn't make it easier. Despite everything, she was still my mom, and part of me couldn't shake the feeling that I should be doing something to help her. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello? Ashley, it's me. It was Greg. I felt my blood run cold. How are you calling me? You're in prison. I have privileges. he said. "I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say to you." "Wait," he said quickly. "Just listen for a minute. I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you. But your mom didn't know the full extent of what I was doing. She was just trying to help me." "She gave you money?" I said. "She took out a loan against her house. She knew you were drowning in debt, and she didn't warn me." "Because I told her I'd handle it," he said. "I told her I'd pay everything back, that I just needed time. She believed me because she loved me. And I'm supposed to feel sorry for her?" "No," he said, "but I'm asking you to help her. She's not like me. She made mistakes, but she didn't set out to hurt you. I did. I'm the one who forged your signature. I'm the one who opened those accounts. She didn't know about any of that. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want to do the right thing," he said. "For once in my life, I want to do something decent. I'm going to testify that your mom wasn't involved in the fraud. I'm going to tell the prosecutor that she had no idea I was using your information." I didn't know what to say. Was this some kind of trick? Was he trying to manipulate me one last time? "Why would you do that?" I asked. "Because it's the truth," he said. "And because I owe it to her. She stood by me when everyone else turned their backs. She believed in me even when she shouldn't have. The least I can do is tell the truth about her involvement." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, staring at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. The next day, Diane called me. I just got off the phone with the prosecutor. Greg's lawyer reached out and said Greg wants to amend his statement. He's willing to testify that your mother wasn't aware of the forged documents or the fraudulent accounts. "I know," I said. "He called me." "He's not supposed to contact you," Diane said, sounding annoyed. "That's a violation of his bail conditions." "He's in prison," I said. "He said he had privileges." Diane sighed. "Regardless, this changes things. If Greg testifies that your mother wasn't involved in the fraud itself, just in giving him money, the charges against her might be reduced or dropped entirely. What do you think I should do?" "That's up to you," Diane said. "But I will say this. Based on everything I've seen, I don't think your mother knew about the forged signatures or the fake accounts. I think she was naive and desperate, and she made terrible financial decisions. But I don't think she's a criminal. I thought about everything that had happened. My mom had hurt me. There was no doubt about that. She'd chosen Greg over me, and she'd enabled his behavior. But had she actually known he was forging my signature? Had she known he was opening accounts in my name? I didn't think so. I thought she'd been willfully ignorant, burying her head in the sand because facing the truth was too painful. But willful ignorance wasn't the same as criminal intent. "I'll talk to her," I said finally. I drove to my mom's house that evening. She answered the door looking exhausted, her face drawn and pale. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Can I come in?" I asked. She nodded and stepped aside. We sat in her living room, the same room where we'd had so many family gatherings over the years. It felt strange to be there now, knowing everything that had happened. "Greg called me," I said. "He told me he's going to testify that you didn't know about the forged signatures." She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears. "I didn't know, Ashley. I swear to you I had no idea he was using your information." "But you knew he was in trouble," I said. "You knew he was drowning in debt, and you gave him money instead of warning me." "I thought I could fix it," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought if I just gave him a little more time, a little more money, he'd turn things around. I didn't want to believe he was capable of doing something like this." "You chose to believe him over protecting me." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I did. And I will never forgive myself for that. I failed you, Ashley. I was your mother, and I was supposed to protect you. And I failed. We sat in silence for a long moment. I wanted to stay angry at her. I wanted to hold on to the hurt and the betrayal. But I was so tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of fighting. Tired of carrying all this pain. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said finally. "I don't know if I ever will be. But I'm not going to let you go to prison for something you didn't do." She looked at me, her face crumpling. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," I said. "Just don't ever lie to me again. If we're going to have any kind of relationship moving forward, you have to be honest with me. About everything." She nodded. "I will. I promise." I stood up to leave, and she reached for my hand. "I love you, Ashley. I know I have a terrible way of showing it, but I do love you." "I know," I said quietly. "But love isn't enough. You have to do better." 2 months after Greg's testimony, the charges against my mom were reduced to a misdemeanor. She pleaded guilty to providing financial assistance without proper due diligence, and was sentenced to 6 months of probation and a fine. It wasn't nothing, but it was better than prison. I didn't attend her sentencing. I told myself it was because I had to work. But the truth was, I wasn't ready to face her in court. I wasn't ready to watch her stand before a judge and accept responsibility for her actions. I was still too angry, too hurt. But I also knew that holding on to that anger was destroying me. Patricia helped me understand that forgiveness didn't mean forgetting what had happened or pretending everything was okay. It meant letting go of the need for revenge, the need to make my mom suffer the way I had suffered. "You don't have to have a relationship with her," Patricia said during one of our sessions. "But you do need to find a way to move forward with your own life." She was right. I'd spent so much time focused on what Greg and my mom had done to me that I'd lost sight of what I wanted for myself. I'd been so consumed by the betrayal that I'd forgotten who I was before all of this happened. So I started making changes, small ones at first. I joined a book club at the local library, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I started taking yoga classes on Sunday mornings. I reconnected with old friends from college who I'd lost touch with over the years. And slowly, piece by piece, I started to feel like myself again. The credit disputes were moving forward. Diane had filed all the necessary paperwork, and the credit bureaus were starting to remove the fraudulent accounts from my report. It would take time, maybe another year or more before my credit was fully restored, but at least I could see progress. I also decided to move. My apartment held too many memories of the months I'd spent drowning in stress and fear. I found a small house to rent on the east side of Portland, a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and friendly neighbors. It felt like a fresh start. One Saturday afternoon, I was unpacking boxes in my new living room when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me answer. "Is this Ashley?" "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Jennifer. I'm one of Greg's other victims." I froze, my hand gripping the phone. "How did you get my number?" "From the prosecutor's office. They gave me permission to contact you. I hope that's okay." "It's fine," I said slowly. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to reach out because I heard you were able to get the charges dropped against your mother, and I was hoping you might be able to help me with something similar." "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath. "My husband was involved with Greg's scheme too. He didn't know Greg was forging signatures or opening fraudulent accounts, but he did invest money in Greg's fake business. Now he's being investigated for conspiracy, and I don't know what to do." I sat down on a half-unpacked box, my mind racing. How much did he invest? $20,000. It was our entire savings. We were supposed to use it for a down payment on a house, but Greg convinced him it was a sure thing, that the business was about to take off. "I'm so sorry," I said, and I meant it. I knew exactly how she felt, the betrayal and the financial devastation. "The prosecutor wants him to testify against Greg, but my husband is scared. He thinks if he cooperates, Greg's lawyer will try to paint him as a co-conspirator. What does your lawyer say? That he should cooperate. But I wanted to talk to someone who's been through this, someone who understands. We talked for over an hour. I told her everything that had happened with my mom, how Greg had manipulated her, how the testimony had helped reduce the charges. I gave her Diane's contact information and suggested she reach out for a consultation. When we hung up, I felt something shift inside me. Talking to Jennifer had reminded me that I wasn't alone in this. Greg had hurt so many people, destroyed so many lives. And while I couldn't undo the damage he'd caused, I could help other people navigate the aftermath. I called Diane the next day. I want to do something, I said. Something to help Greg's other victims. What did you have in mind? I don't know exactly, but there has to be something. A support group, maybe? Or a resource center where people can get information about how to deal with identity theft and fraud. Diane was quiet for a moment. That's actually a great idea. I know several lawyers who handle cases like this, and I'm sure they'd be willing to volunteer their time. We could set up monthly meetings, provide free consultations, help people navigate the legal system. Can we really do that? Absolutely. In fact, I think it's exactly what this community needs. Over the next few weeks, we worked together to set up the support group. We found a space at a local community center that would let us use their conference room for free. We reached out to lawyers, financial advisors, and therapists who were willing to volunteer their expertise. The first meeting of the support group was held on a rainy Tuesday evening in November. I arrived early to set up chairs and put out coffee and cookies. I was nervous, unsure if anyone would actually show up. But by the time we started, there were 12 people in the room. 12 people whose lives had been destroyed by fraud, identity theft, and financial manipulation. Some of them were victims of Greg specifically. Others had been targeted by different criminals, but were dealing with similar issues. I stood at the front of the room, my hands shaking as I introduced myself. My name is Ashley, and my stepfather forged my signature and took out over $60,000 in fraudulent loans in my name. Saying it out loud, to a room full of strangers, felt both terrifying and liberating. I told them my story, about the day at the credit union when Janet had called the police, about the months of legal battles and credit disputes. I told them about my mom, about the betrayal, and the complicated process of rebuilding trust. When I finished, there was silence. Then a woman in her 50s raised her hand. How did you cope with the anger? I thought about it. Honestly, I didn't. Not at first. I was angry all the time, at everyone. My stepfather, my mom, even myself for not seeing the warning signs. But eventually I realized that holding on to that anger was only hurting me. It wasn't hurting them. So I started therapy, and I started focusing on what I could control instead of what I couldn't. Another person asked about the legal process, and I deferred to Diane, who was sitting in the back of the room. She came up and explained the steps for disputing fraudulent debts, how to file police reports, how to work with credit bureaus. The meeting lasted 2 hours, and by the end, several people had exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet for coffee. As people were leaving, Jennifer, the woman who had called me weeks earlier, came up to me. "Thank you," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "My husband testified yesterday, and the prosecutor agreed to drop the charges against him. He's going to have to testify at Greg's trial, but at least he's not facing prison time." "That's wonderful," I said, hugging her. "I'm so glad." "It's because of you," she said. "You gave me the courage to fight back." After everyone left, I sat in the empty conference room, looking at the circle of chairs. For the first time in months, I felt like I was doing something meaningful. I was turning my pain into something positive, helping other people who were going through what I'd been through. Greg's trial was scheduled for January. Diane kept me updated on the proceedings, but I tried not to think about it too much. The prosecutor had a strong case, and with all the evidence they'd gathered, Greg's conviction was almost certain. but I didn't want to attend the trial. I didn't want to see him again, didn't want to give him the satisfaction of knowing he still had power over me. So I decided to stay away, to focus on my own healing instead. Christmas came and went. I spent it alone, which felt strange, but also peaceful. I made myself a nice dinner, watched old movies, and went to bed early. My mom called, but I didn't answer. I sent her a text saying I needed more time, that I wasn't ready to see her yet. She texted back, "I understand. I love you." I stared at those 3 words for a long time before putting my phone away. In January, the trial began. Diane texted me updates throughout the week. Greg had decided to plead guilty after all, accepting a revised plea deal that would give him 8 years in prison instead of 5. The judge had been unimpressed with his lack of remorse during the pretrial hearings and had made it clear that if the case went to trial, he would push for the maximum sentence. 8 years. It still didn't feel like enough, but it was something. The day of Greg's sentencing, I took the afternoon off work. I didn't go to the courthouse, but I sat in a coffee shop nearby, drinking tea and trying to stay calm. At 3:30, Diane called. "It's done," she said. 8 years in prison, full restitution to all victims, and a permanent ban from working in any financial services or consulting capacity. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "Thank you, Diane. For everything. You did this, Ashley. You stood up for yourself. You didn't let him destroy you." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time, watching people walk past the window. It was over. Greg was going to prison, my credit was being restored, and I was building a new life for myself. It wasn't the life I'd imagined a year ago, but it was mine. That evening, I went home and called my mom. She answered on the first ring. "Ashley?" "Hi, Mom. I'm so glad you called. How are you?" "I'm okay. I wanted to tell you that Greg was sentenced today. 8 years. She was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I am sorry for everything." "I know you are," I said. "And I think I'm finally ready to start moving forward." We talked for an hour, really talked, for the first time in months. She told me she'd been going to therapy too, working through her own guilt and trying to understand why she'd let Greg manipulate her. She'd also started attending a support group for people who'd been in controlling relationships. "I'm not making excuses," she said, "but I'm starting to understand how I let it happen, and I'm working on making sure it never happens again." "That's good, Mom. I'm glad you're getting help." "Would you maybe want to meet for coffee sometime?" she asked hesitantly. "No pressure. Only if you're ready." I thought about it. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew that avoiding her forever wasn't the answer either. "Maybe next month," I said. "Let me get through the holidays first." "Of course, whenever you're ready." We said goodbye, and I hung up feeling lighter than I had in months. I wasn't ready to fully forgive her yet, but I was ready to start trying. The support group continued to grow. By February, we were averaging 20 people per meeting, and we'd expanded to offer weekly sessions. I'd stepped back from leading the group, letting Diane and some of the other volunteers take over. But I still attended regularly. One evening, a new person showed up. She was young, maybe 23 or 24, and she looked terrified. During introductions, she said her name was Melissa, and that her boyfriend had stolen her identity and maxed out her credit cards. After the meeting, I approached her. "How are you holding up?" She shrugged, tears in her eyes. "I don't know. I feel so stupid. Everyone says I should have seen it coming, but I trusted him." "You're not stupid," I said firmly. "Con artists are good at what they do. They know how to manipulate people, how to make you believe they care about you, when really they're just using you." "How did you get through it?" she asked. "One day at a time. I said. I focused on the things I could control. I fixed my credit. I went to therapy. I built a support system. And eventually, I started to feel like myself again. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you. It helps to know I'm not alone. You're definitely not alone, I said. We've all been where you are, and we're all here to help. By spring, my credit score had improved significantly. The fraudulent accounts were gone, and I'd been making consistent payments on my secured credit card. I even qualified for a small personal loan, which I used to buy a used car to replace the one I'd been driving since college. It felt like a victory, small but meaningful. I also got a promotion at work. My boss had noticed how much I'd been taking on, how I'd been showing up early and staying late, and she offered me a position as the office manager. It came with a raise and better benefits, and I accepted gratefully. Things were finally starting to feel stable again. One Saturday in April, I met my mom for coffee. It was awkward at first, both of us unsure what to say, but eventually we fell into easier conversation. She told me about her job at a local bookstore, a part-time position she'd taken to help pay off her debts. She'd sold her house and moved into a small apartment, and she seemed more at peace than I'd seen her in years. I'm proud of you, she said, for everything you've done to rebuild your life. Thanks, Mom. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said, but I want you to know that I'm working on being a better person, a better mother. I can see that, I said, and I appreciate it. We finished our coffee and agreed to meet again the following month. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start. As summer approached, I realized how far I'd come. A year ago, I'd been drowning in debt, terrified and alone, unsure how I was going to survive. Now I had a new home, a good job, a support system, and a sense of purpose I'd never had before. Greg's victims had become my community. We checked in on each other, celebrated victories together, and supported each other through setbacks. Some of us had become close friends, meeting outside of the support group for dinners or movies or just to talk. I'd turned my pain into something positive, and that felt like the best revenge of all. Greg served his full 8-year sentence with no chance of early parole. He lost everything in the process: his reputation, his freedom, and any semblance of the life he'd tried to build on lies and stolen money. My mom completed her probation and slowly began rebuilding her finances, working 2 part-time jobs and living simply in her small apartment. She attended every support group meeting I invited her to, not as a victim, but as someone committed to understanding the damage she'd enabled. Jennifer's husband testified at 2 more fraud trials, helping prosecutors convict other con artists, and their marriage survived stronger than before. The other victims found their own paths forward, some faster than others, but all of them determined not to let their betrayals define them. As for me, I still run the support group, still help people navigate the aftermath of financial betrayal. I've learned that revenge isn't about making someone suffer. It's about refusing to let them win. And every time I help someone rebuild their life, every time I see someone walk into that conference room broken and leave with hope, I know I've already won.